Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited for today's interview. We are talking to a very well-loved fantasy author. We are talking thousands of reviews, including a #1 best-selling audiobook with over 3,000 reviews, which is an amazing feat. I don't even know what's happening right now. We are talking to the one and only Davis Ashura. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fabulous. I'm super excited to talk to you because I recently came across your work on Amazon and I was blown away by the covers. Furthermore, when I started reading the descriptions and reviews, and I knew I had to get you on straight away, and I'm so grateful that you said yes.
Of course.
Can you tell me a little bit about where your journey began? Why did you start writing, and how did you find the publishing process?
Oh gosh, that's a long story, but I'll try to dial it in as quick as I can. So I wanted to be a writer since I was 15 years old. And I was just reading books at the time. And things got in the way, college and job and marriage and raising children. So I really didn't get started writing properly until I was about 38 years old. So, lots of people write lots younger than I do, but it can still be done at a later age. And 38 is not old. And so I started writing. It was crap. I tried to fix it. It was still crap. And then I just thought, well, I just don't have any. I just don't have any skill. And so there's a local community college that was having a short story and novel writing class. I took them, and I kept on writing. I just kept with it, and eventually I figured it out. Figured out what I was doing wrong, which I hadn't realized yet. And so that's how it began. I just kept on going.
Wow. And what was it? What was the biggest thing that you were doing? It's not wrong, but your biggest learning curve, I want to say, that you had to adjust.
I didn't know my characters. And so I didn't learn who they were until probably a third of the book was already gone. And only then would they start to come to life. And before that, they were just, words on a page. And so I had to learn how to create the characters and involve them as far as their personality is concerned much more quickly. And it's strange, but a lot of authors actually learn to write by writing fan fiction. And I think we learn different elements and lessons from it. But for me, that was what I learned from writing fan fiction about Superman and Wonder Woman.
Yeah. Good choices as well. I love both of them. What made you decide to hit publish? How was that process for you? Because it's a completely different ball game to just writing.
Oh yeah. So writing is fun. I love doing that. Publishing is work. I hate doing that, and it's a business. And so I had to treat it like a business. You could have just hit publish on Amazon or Kobo or Barnes and Noble or whatever, and just throw it out there and hope somebody finds it. But I treated it like a business. And so the options in the United States are to either try to find an agent and a publisher. And I just didn't feel like doing that because I was lazy. I just didn't feel like dealing with it. And it seemed like a long, laborious process. I just thought, I might be able to do this on my own. And so I just published it on Amazon, had no idea what I was doing. In essence, when I say I treated it like a business, I didn't really start doing that. That's kind of a lie. I just threw it out there. And then when it started selling, I had to treat it like a business. But it was just sheer luck.
I think a lot of authors, it's a familiar story. A lot of authors release a book and they don't yet realize how much work is soon to be invested into it, because when you do switch on that, oh my, this is a business, I need to put all this effort and work in, that's when it really starts ticking over. One thing that I found super amazing about your stuff too is I want to say, and I hope I'm not assuming wrong, that you're very active in AMS ads as well, because I can see that you're sort of a bit everywhere on Amazon, which is awesome. We will talk about that a little bit later because I am intrigued to see if you have a secret formula. But I want to talk about one of your very popular book series. It's your Cast and Outcast trilogy, which is very popular. For those who haven't yet read it, can you tell us a little bit about that series?
Of course. So I'm Asian Indian, and so we've had the caste system in our country for thousands of years. And it basically segregates people. I mean, I'm sure most people know what I mean by that. And I wanted to write a story about what would it be like if it wasn't just societal segregation, but everybody kind of you would tell they're Indian, but what if their magic was also segregated? Like this caste can do this, and another caste can do this, and because of that, they only intermarry, and so the physical manifestations also start impacting how they look, and all the castes look different. So they have a different name, a different appearance, and a different magic. And I just wanted to sort of blend that into a fantasy novel. And most people think of the caste system as a bad thing, which it is. But then I also wanted to twist it around a little bit and create a city where all these castes are living that's beautiful, and sort of ask a question of what should I do with this city, and the world that it exists in. And that's where the cast and the outcast started from.
Yeah, that's
And of course,
amazing.
there's also a hero and a heroine, and I love stories. I think that those are so important. And she's not in a cast; she's the outcast. She's the one that sort of shines the mirror on his society and forces him to change.
With fantasy is quite a difficult genre too, right? Because not only do you have all the world building and then you've got very strong characters usually, but also one thing that I find really tricky as well is the action scenes.
Mm-hmm.
How did you go with the fight scenes? Because it can be very difficult logistically to write them.
Yeah, those are challenging, especially the logistics of it, especially people that really know how militaries move. I mean, they could chop up just about any book and tell you what's being done wrong. The problem is if you read the logistics, it can become really boring. And so I mean, there are authors that can do it really, really well, though. And so I sort of do a little bit of hand waving around the logistics part. But as far as the fight scenes are concerned, I try to focus rather than large scale interventions between groups of, say, hundreds and hundreds. It's really individual battles between one person and other things that he's fighting. And so I scale it down and just try to show it from a more narrow lens.
And I guess that is the great thing about fantasy too, is you can get a little bit away with the hand
Mm-hmm.
waving and logistics because you can throw in magical elements as well.
Right.
I want to know, you are also a full-time physician, which is awesome. But I'm curious
Yeah.
as to how you balance that with
Everyone
life.
asks that
Right?
question. It's not
Yeah.
that bad. So first, you have to marry a wonderful spouse, if or stay single for the rest of your life, one or the other. So I married a wonderful woman, and so she's just been my biggest supporter. She's the one that made me take the short story writing class and the novel writing class. I'd sort of given up, and so she brought this newspaper home, and she's like, "Look, they're having this short story novel or a short story class at the local community college. Why don't you take that?" And so she kind of pushed me out the door to do it. So she gives me time to write at night. So I go to work, do my work, come home, spend about 2 or 3 hours hanging out with the family. And then at around 8 o'clock, I start writing and write for about 2 or 3 hours. And then that's the end of the day. That's
Mm.
how it was for many years. I've become more efficient at being a writer. So now I can actually get that same amount of work done a little bit quicker, so I can watch TV again. So
Yeah.
I wasn't able to do that for a long time.
You had to have the discipline, but now we got a little bit more
Yes,
balance. I love
now
that.
I can watch TV again. That's so nice. And
That's
read books.
So how long are your books roughly? How many words?
So I have two series. The Cast and the Outcasts would be between about 160 to 180,000 words. Three series. Did I say two? Whatever. Anyway, I have three. So the Cast and the Outcasts are about 160 to 180. And then I have a young adult. Well, it's not really young adult. I wrote the first book for my teenage boys. So that was young adult. And then, the epic fantasy author in me couldn't just keep it down. And so it became an epic fantasy series, and it's linked to the Cast and the Outcast. And those books range between about 80, and each book is subsequently longer, 80 to I think about 125,000 words for the second series. And then Instrument of Omens, which is what I'm working on right now. I think the first book was 185, the second book was 200, and the third book is about 205 now, 205,000, a little north of that.
Two questions coming off this. First, what do the teenage sons think about Dad being an epic fantasy author?
They're my sons, so they're utterly unimpressed. They're just like, Dad's writing again. And that's it. You know, everything that I do is not cool. Being a physician, saving someone's life, being an author, getting any kind of letters in the mail from readers, they're just typical boys.
Wait until they become adults. They might appreciate it a little bit more. Obviously, these are quite large and sizable books. How do you keep, what is your writing process? How do you keep track of where you're at in your story?
That's hard. I mean, I keep track of a lot of it in my head, but mostly I have these book Bibles that I've created, you know, one for the cast, one for William Wilde, and one for Instrument of Omens. And it keeps on growing. It doesn't look that large when you just look at it, but it's just stuffed with information. And even in the editing process, I'll always put comments in the Word document, add this to the glossary, add this to the glossary. Like even if I describe somebody's eye color, I need to know what that is. And I don't want to go hunt it down again. So I just keep lots of notes for myself. So that's not very fun, but it is necessary. I kind of hate it.
Well, I was going to say, are you a plotter or a pantser then?
I'm a bit of both.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a plot that I write out on Scrivener. And so it's like each scene gets a paragraph of description of what happens. And then without fail, it just goes out the window for the most part by around, I don't know, the 1/4 mark. And then I have to readjust everything because somebody decides to do something that I didn't expect. And there it goes.
Who is your favorite character and why?
My favorite character would be Jazeera. She's one of the main characters in the cast and the Outcasts. And so she's pretty forceful. That's part of the reason I like her so much. But she's also empathetic and loving. She likes to sing. So she's not just she's a warrior. She's nurturing, she's loving, she's challenging. And she's really the reason that all of my series are linked. So it wasn't supposed to be that way. I was writing the first chapter of William Wilde, and he's walking through this high school hallway. So it's set on Earth. Yeah, I know. It's linked to a series that's set in a different world. And he sees this freshman, this young girl that looks lost. And he asks her name, and she says, "My name is Jazeera." And I thought, well, you're not supposed to be here. And she said, "Yeah, make it work." And there it went. So there went the entire plot.
That's so cool. I love that because you have sort of created, do they call it an Omegaverse? I think it is, where they are sort of all interlinked. And it's interesting that that wasn't initially what you'd planned for. It just sort of,
not at all.
Here it is.
No, I even wrote at the end of Cast and the Outcast, you know, I'm glad you enjoyed this journey. I think I'll give Rook and Jazeera a chance to catch a break and enjoy their lives. Yeah. And I thought, well, so long. That was it. Maybe I'll come back and see how you're doing in a few years. And then the next chapter, there she is, forcing her way back in.
One thing I really want to compliment you on is your covers. They are utterly stunning. And definitely like your books, I have not yet read them, but I'm going to because these are the type of books I love to read. And the covers just drew me in straight away. It's something I would collect off a bookshelf immediately. And so I wanted to kind of talk about covers a bit. First, who is your cover artist? Second, why do you think it's so important to make sure that you've got the right cover for your market?
So my cover artist is fabulous. His name is Andreas. He's from Greece. So I'm not going to try to butcher his last name, but it starts with a Z. And he's so funny because he's got such a good command of English when we email each other. And I've always threatened him that I'm going to one day take a vacation to Greece and chalk it off as a writing expense because I got to meet my cover artist. And he always says, "Oh, but you'll hate my English when I speak it out. It'll sound like nails being driven into your skull." And so, but he's way better at English than I am at Greek. So there you have it. But Andreas is fabulous, fabulous to work with. And basically, I just have a concept and describe the character that I'm thinking of having him draw, and then I let him go with it, and he always comes up with something fabulous. I think it's important from a publishing, which is a business aspect, to have really good cover art, because that's how, I mean, we're visual creatures for the most part, and we look at a cover and that's going to be the first entry into that book, yeah, potentially. And so I wanted beautiful covers just because A, I want beautiful covers, and B, from a publishing perspective, it's kind of necessary. Yeah. And I'm just lucky enough to get to work with Andreas.
Speaking about sending him an original concept, was that something that you did from the start, or were you a lot more, you had more visual representation, like I like a cross between this and this and this, or you had that trust from the start?
I didn't know what I wanted until I described one thing and he drew it, and it was so much better than anything I could have ever come up with. Andreas, I just basically gave him an outline of what I wanted, and what he created was so much better than what I had in mind. And so it was right after that. And this was just like fortuitous, because I just wanted art for myself. I wasn't planning on redoing the covers. So I've actually had 3 different covers now for the first 2 books of the Cast and the Outcast. And the first was done by a friend, and the second was done by a professional, and they were really good. But then Andreas came along with what I thought was just going to be art, and I thought it'd be fun. But it was so incredible. I was like, I've got to get these covers or this art as my new covers, because, you know, it was time to refresh them anyway. And so after I saw what he came up with, I gave him outlines of what the characters look like, where they are, and let him go with it.
Wow.
And he just did a fabulous job.
Yeah, he's done a great job. What then, another thing that is very well connected with your covers as well is your brand. So I had a little stalk on your website, and your website's phenomenal. And then you also have, like, you go onto your social media pages, but you really have an understanding of your aesthetic and what you're presenting to those who have freshly come across your site, or those who have been following you for a long time. But you really have an understanding of who you are as an author and your brand. And I was wondering if you had any tips or advice for fellow authors who might not be sure as to what their stamp is in the world.
Oh, that's a tough question. I'm older, so that helps, because I'm kind of established and a crotchety old person at this point. Not really, but I like to pretend I'm old and crotchety. I am the old part, but not the crotchety, although my kids might say that I am. But in terms of a brand, who I am on social media, it's not entirely who I am. Like, you don't see my love of sports or competition, mostly because I don't think people care that much. But my wife says I'm the most competitive person that she's ever met. And even yesterday, I was watching a football game, American football, and I was so mad at how my team was doing. I couldn't watch him anymore. I was gonna, hurt my computer monitor, so had to turn it off. So you don't see that aspect of myself, but it is there. And so I present myself as an author, because that's who I am as an author. What am I trying to write as an author? And it's stories about people I care about. That doesn't mean if you write grimdark, you have to be a grimdarky kind of person, because I hope you're not. But for me, it's a little bit easier of a transition, just because what I'm writing is hopeful most of the time. And so how I present myself is in the same way.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps a lot of people, but that is what it is.
I think it does in a way too. I think, and I dare say that some people actually find themselves through their author career because once you focus so much on a project, I find writing therapeutic in a way almost. So I
Yeah.
feel like people start catching on to glimpses of their self and self-reflection even in their characters. So it does help you hone in a little bit on who you are. And I think once you know who you are yourself a little bit better, you can represent that a little bit more on social medias
Mm-hmm.
and thing, and you can really transpire that and connect with your readers in that special way. I am curious, do you do many conventions and book signings?
I don't do a lot of book signings. I do one big convention every year. I was doing a few more before COVID, but then all the conventions shut down. So the one I really love going to, which is like my Christmas and New Year's all wrapped up in one, is Dragon Con, which is every at the end of August, early September every year in Atlanta, Georgia, here in the States. And my friends go to it, Bryce O'Connor, Dirk Ashton, and we just have a great time. Mostly what we do is we go around visiting the other creatives, especially the artists, and especially Bryce, buy way too much art. And a lot of it is just because we want to support those artists. And sometimes we end up working with them and having commissions done by them. And I just like being around creative people that are working in a different medium than I am. And just picking their brains about the story behind their art is really cool.
I want to talk about one of your massive feats as well. You've got numerous. I find you so fascinating. It gets me very excited.
Wow.
But in 2015, you were a finalist in the International Book Awards for Fantasy, which is really cool. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And also, a number one best-selling audiobook with over 3,000 ratings and reviews. How, when, why, how?
So the first one, I just entered it, and it was a lark. I just thought, doesn't seems like it's easy enough, and so I entered it. And so when I was a finalist, it was really it was pretty cool. And then the first book of Instrument of Omens won the reader's favorite for epic fantasy a couple years ago, so that was really cool too. And again, it was just I entered on a lark, didn't expect anything, so those are nice. I don't plan on doing that very often just because I don't need to. I don't think I need to. As far as the audiobooks, that was luck in a way also. And what I mean by that is audiobooks are a huge and growing segment of the overall book market. And I just happened to catch the wave as it was rising really fast. And there was a lot of people who wanted audiobooks and there weren't enough of them. And I think that's part of the reason why my book did so well, is because there weren't as many offerings. And so it was kind of lucky that I was just out there as fast as I was.
How did you go with creating your audiobook? What was the process like for you?
That was an interesting experience and a lot of fun. It actually has turned out to be probably the most fun and enjoyable aspect of publishing, because I had to search out narrators, and in my head I thought, I wonder if these audiobook listeners sort of gravitate to narrators rather than authors. It was just a question I wondered, and I kind of made a bet that was the case. So then I was looking at all the big traditionally published authors out there and looking at who their narrators were. And I wanted a young voice. I wanted somebody that sounded fresh, and that was Nick Podell. And so I just basically emailed Nick out of the blue and asked him if he'd be interested in narrating my books. And he was like, sure. Didn't expect him to say that, but he's the narrator for what is his name? I'm drawing a blank on it. The Name of the Wind. He narrated the U.S. version of Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, and so that's a huge deal. And I thought, well, I'll just ask Nick if he'd want to narrate it. So that's been one of the most fun aspects, because when the book is ready to go into production, Nick will give me a call, and we'll just, for an hour, go over names, how they're pronounced, how different characters speak. And it's just a lot of fun. I mean, it's a different way that the book is. And
And
then
I
when I listen to it, I'm like, wow, I hope the rest of the book, the written book, is as good as the, audio book.
I imagine it would be very challenging too, because going into audio, you really do need to have an understanding of your characters, especially in the
Oh,
sense,
yeah.
okay, what accent do they have? Do they have a certain high pitch? Like those are sometimes things, I guess, that when you're writing, you don't think about.
No, I don't. I mean, I'll describe voices if they're important to me just because of how it might impact the character whose headspace I'm in. But generally, I don't think about that until Nick comes along and makes me.
I want to talk about a tricky beast, which is
Mhm.
marketing and advertising. And
Of
I want to know,
course.
as I said before, I saw your ads all over Amazon, which is amazing. And I wanted to see if you have found a secret formula or what you found that's helped and worked for you.
Amazon changes what they are doing all the time. So I remember I was at a convention with my friends and we were talking about how the ads weren't working as well anymore. And it was, shortly after that, everything just cratered. Nothing was working. And and so I I think, and I could be totally wrong because I really don't know the answer to this, but right now, there's a couple of different ad platforms that are available through Amazon. There's the automatic and the manually entered keywords. I can't get the manually entered keywords to fire at all. So everything that I'm doing is automatic. And, it's just basically genres that you're inputting into the automaticity, like epic fantasy, young adult, coming of age, whatever. Those are the only things that are firing for me. And I also think that there might be a certain portion, and again, this is all guesswork because nobody really truly knows, that how the book is doing also will trigger how frequently Amazon will show the ad. And it helps to be on the first page.
Yeah.
Like if you're on, say, Game of Thrones and there's this sponsored ad section, and you're on the third page, nobody's going to get to it.
What are other things that you have used besides Amazon? What have you found that's really helped for you?
I also advertise on Facebook,
Yeah.
and they make it fairly easy to build an audience that, I mean, you wouldn't want to show an epic fantasy novel to somebody who likes uh, cozy mysteries. They're going to not want to see that ad. So they make it fairly easy to dial into people that like epic fantasy. But they always change how you can create the ads. Like how we created an ad a year ago is totally different than how you do it now. I kind of wonder, is there an employee that just goes around screwing with this to make it so that you have to waste your time trying to figure it out again? But yeah, they do change things a lot. So you always have to be on top of it. I mean, both AMS and Facebook, they're advertising. I mean, it's an ongoing learning process.
And have you done anything such as, or have you gone through the phases of offering your book for free, going Kindle Unlimited, going wide, all the little bits and pieces? Because you've now been publishing since 2014, so 7 years. I think actually we're around the same. So
right.
we're veterans in the field now. No, I'm kidding. But yes. So you've probably gone through a lot of different tactics. So right now, as you are, what is the must for you?
So there's two, this is all publishing. This is not writing. It's just, the business of your book. So there's basically two revenue streams that I have, audiobook and ebook. And, print is a very, very tiny segment of that. I mean, how much I make in print, I don't even bother monitoring it because it's so small. So it's just two advertising streams, and they're separate. They're separate markets, the ebook and the audiobook. And the ebook market is also is sort of segmented in that there are people that just read traditionally published books, and Amazon, I think, has sort of trained a lot of people to only read books on a Kindle. or on a phone or something like that. And those are becoming two different markets as well. Um, and so in terms of how I approach that, the ebook, if I go wide, I have not had any success in making up lost revenue from Kindle Unlimited, from the other sources. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. It's not ideal to have all your eggs in one basket, but it is what it is. But there are different opportunities for other revenue streams. A lot of authors are doing Patreon accounts. I haven't because I don't write fast enough to supply readers with fresh new content all the time. And also I feel kind of gross about asking people to support me since I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know what, I make enough money. I don't need to have somebody give me money to be on Patreon. So I don't like that. I did it for a little bit and I just didn't like it and I just turned it off. And then there's Kickstarter or something similar to that where, you can potentially reach a larger or a different audience than you would with your ebook or audiobook, people that want special editions of print volumes. So I haven't ventured into Kickstarter yet, but maybe one day.
I think one thing to consider from this as well is obviously time is limited too. So you really need to prioritize. And I'm making an assumption here, but I know for many years I was trying to stick pasta to the wall, basically. I was trying all these different things, hoping that something could work. And it was only until I realized that I needed to realize I have this much time in a day. I need to prioritize and focus on this and this and this. This is what works for me instead of trying all these new different things. If you have time for Patreon, then that's great. But you don't necessarily, not everyone's going to have the time for it because you do have to invest time and effort into creating all those different things. So if you found that audiobooks and ebooks work for you, then you might as well focus all your time on that.
That's pretty much what I've decided also is that I don't have time to do all these other things. I only have time to write. And even the advertising, man, that is such a pain to set up the ads. It just is like hours that I'd rather do just about anything else. And, but you do it. And once it's done and they're rolling, you're like, oh, okay, please keep rolling. Yeah. And so I don't have to ever do this again for at least a year. But in general, that's pretty much what I've come to believe also is just focus on what I enjoy, which is I enjoy writing. And that's what I want to do. I don't want to spend time on fulfilling all these Kickstarters or whatever.
Yeah.
That's just too much work.
What has been your favorite book to write so far and why?
My favorite book, that's a tough one. I would say it's actually the one that I just finished. Okay. The book 3. It wasn't my favorite, but it may be my most fulfilling just because it's my most challenging. Yeah. It's the fulcrum around which the entire series revolves. Mm-hmm. And it's all because I wrote myself into a corner when I was writing my William Wilde series. There was a bunch of scenes that were included from this current series, or at least places where my characters were. And I had no idea I was writing myself into a corner when I was doing all that. I thought, oh, that's cool. That's cool. And if I could go back, I'd slap the Jesus out of myself for doing that because I have to write into that corner now and then find the exit. And I think I've done it and I kind of like it. So yeah. I'd say it's this current one. Okay. I'm really kind of happy with it.
Amazing. Makes you work a little bit harder for it, like putting the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's 3 worlds now that I have to make sure I don't contradict. And so and 3 timelines. And that's really, really hard. But I think I did it. And so I'm kind of proud of myself about that.
Yeah. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
What would you say then, overall, so far in your writing career, what has been your greatest challenge and your greatest accomplishment?
Challenge would probably be understanding the business of publishing. That really is hard. And really getting that to work right, um, I think the most fulfilling thing really is just when you hear from people that say that your book was a light in their life or kept them sane during COVID. And you realize that what you're trying to do, which is put a little light out there, just reflect a little bit of it, has helped for some people. That's really cool. I think that's pretty awesome.
What has been your most memorable reader interaction moment? You're saying before that you get fan mail and things like that. I'm curious as to what has been the
I
most.
don't get a lot. It's not like I'm a huge author. I'm just a
You're doing
I'm
good.
a,
You're doing
I'm
good.
doing good. But it was my first Dragon Con, and so there was David Weber dressed up in his, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's this really famous science fiction author. He created this wonderful starship captain. Her name is Honor Harrington, and basically he almost built the entire space opera genre involving spaceships, you know, battling it out like Horatio Hornblower or something like that. And Honor Harrington is his character. She's wonderful. And so he's dressed up as an admiral in her navy, the Royal Manticora Navy. And so of course I was just talking to him because I couldn't believe, oh, I get to talk to David Weber. And so I was talking to him, and I see this gentleman behind me, and I'd been talking to David for about a half an hour. And so I said, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take up all his time. I'll be done in a second. So I quickly said my goodbyes and left. And then this gentleman spoke to David Weber for maybe 30 seconds. And then he came over to see me, and he says, are you Davis Ashura? I wanted to get your autograph. I just thought that was hysterical. He wasn't waiting on David Weber. He was waiting on me. So that was kind of cool.
Oh, that's so good. I love it. I bet that would have been a big signature with a big grin. Be like, yes, I can sign
Oh,
that.
yes. Yes. It's absolutely.
This is my favorite question to ask. What is the goal for you? What is the dream that you're chasing for your writing career?
Oh, I just like to write. It's just my outlet. And so it would be wonderful to be a full-time writer at some point in my life. I mean, I don't ever want to give up practicing medicine because I think I I like it too much, but cutting back and not having that so much of that stress would be nice, because writing isn't stressful. Writing is just it's just fun. So that would be the dream, to be able to write full time.
Well, I think you'll definitely achieve it. So watch this
Hope
space. It might
so.
give you more time to watch your sports as well.
Oh yes, that would be nice.
I have a segment called Speed Dating with an Author. So basically, what it is 5 quick, rapid questions. Are you ready?
Sure, I'm
Amazing.
ready.
What is the most clumsiest moment you've ever had?
When I fell into a well when I was 3 years old.
How deep was the well?
Like 20 feet. My grandfather had to fish me out. It was in India. So I was leaning over, looking at the water, thinking I saw fishies. And my mom was watching, and then down I went
Did you come out?
into
Were
the
you
well.
unharmed? You were okay?
Oh, I was fine. My grandfather was all scraped up, though, when he had to go down and get me.
Wow, I haven't heard that one before. Glad everyone is safe. What
Yep.
is the 3 words that would best describe you?
Dedicated, hardworking, and focused.
What song best describes you?
I still haven't found what I'm looking for.
Okay. Who's that from?
You too.
Oh, it is too. What is your life motto?
Try it. The
Yeah,
worst that can happen is it doesn't work.
yeah, that's a good one. What is a unique talent or skill set that you have that not many people know about?
If I did have more time, I'd be a cabinet maker or a woodworker.
Really?
Do you see the over my this shoulder the that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I built that. That's my filing cabinet, and I built that because I hated the filing cabinets that were available in the stores. They just looked like ugly office furniture, and I wanted a two-door horizontal filing cabinet. So I followed my motto. I tried it, and I built it. Now it's not like I just learned how to do it on my own. I have a friend who taught me how to do it, and together we built it. So it was cool, you know.
That's so cool. That's so it's so professional looking too. Like, wow. Have you made anything else since?
So the first thing I made was a desk console, and I remember telling my wife what I was going to make, and she's like, "You're not going to do that." And so then I, of course, had to come home with it. And so that was the first thing I made. That was the second thing. I made a coffee table and a king size bed.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, yeah, I haven't built anything since I started writing though, because I only have time for one hobby.
Yeah, amazing.
Except a cajon. I built a cajon, which is like a seated drum or something like that for my oldest son. We built that together. And
they still don't think you're cool. I don't know what's happening here.
Not at all.
I have had so much fun. What are we looking out for? What's coming up, and where do we find you?
So my third book should hopefully be coming out if it's as good as I'm hoping it is. Fingers crossed. Unless it needs to go through major rewrites, it will hopefully be out at the end of this year. It's called A Necessary Heresy, book 3 of Instrument of Omens. So either late this year or early next. And you can find me either at my website at www.davisashura.com or on Facebook. Those are the two best areas or places to find me. And you can contact me in both of those places too.
Amazing. Do you have a Facebook reader group or anything like that?
No, because that's too much work.
Exactly. Time, prioritizing. I love it. Well, I have had such a good time. Thank you for coming on today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe I'm hoping one day I actually can go to the Dragon Con. So maybe one day we will cross paths, and that'd be really cool.
That would be great. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. I'll talk to you later, Davis. Have a good time.
You too. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Bye.
Bye.